Do you know how to run a successful networking meeting or land a corporate sponsor? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV. And this week my special guests are Linda Hollander, the corporate sponsorship concierge, and Nathan Perez, all about the 20-minute networking meeting. It's all here on YouTube, Guys TV, and you can also catch me on my worldwide podcast and KCAA radio show, Guys Radio. Thanks for your support. Guys Radio, and I have a very special guest today that I'm going to introduce you to. First, I want to say that if you've been listening to Guys Radio, you know that I'm bringing in very specific topics now because I really want to expand the way we help your listeners out there and your viewers, our viewers also. So today we're going to talk about that elusive skill of networking, something we all have to do. So let's talk about that a little bit. It's the most important skill you'll probably ever have in your business career, but not that many people are that good at it. And there's a lot of people who are great at their jobs and they're terrible at interviewing, and they're even worse at networking because people don't like to do it. Why is it so hard? Why do people shy away from it? Well, we're going to find out because we've got an expert. His name is Nathan Perez. He's the author of the multi-award-winning 20-minute networking meeting, Learn to Network, Get a Job. There's four different editions: executive, professional, graduate, and veterans. Really terrific books, and they'll really help you in a very simple step-by-step process as to how you do networking. Let me tell you a little bit more about Nathan. He's a national speaker, an executive career as a job search coach at Career Innovation. What's interesting about him, though, he's had so many different jobs, starting with being a trained actor, that he's been each side of the desk. He's been looking for a job. He's been the person who's there when you're going to look for a job in certain companies, and he really has a lot of empathy for what it takes to interview, what it takes to be a successful networker, and the skills that you really need to move your career along outside of the box where people just look for jobs online and they think that's the only thing available. Well, as you know, and as I know from my long-term corporate career, just about every job I got was through networking. It wasn't through what was ever posted, because a lot of those jobs that are posted, they're gone already or they don't even exist. So a little bit more about Nathan. 20 years in front of audiences, 15 years as a speaker, executive search industry. So he's been on every side of the fence. And again, the name of the book is the 20-minute networking meeting, Learn to Network, Get a Job. My special guest on Guys Radio, and we're going to do it in 20 minutes, Nathan Perez.
Hey, Robert. Good to see you, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Well, my pleasure. I probably used up 5 minutes in the introduction, but forgive me for that. So let's start right at the beginning. A lot of people have a misunderstanding as to what networking really is, and because of that, they have a lot of anxiety. Tell us what networking is.
Yeah, right. You know, maybe we should actually start with talking about what networking is not, because I think what most people think networking is actually what networking is not.
Okay.
And networking is not about being all, slick and smooth and being salesy and dropping names and all that sort of thing. I think what we've done is we've sort of pinned these sort of behaviors on the word itself, and that's why people tend to avoid it. But what it really is just the obtainment and the exchange of information. That's it. And if you think about it from that perspective, we are networking all the time. We just don't think about it that way, right? And it could be anything from, how was your day to day, or where did you get that jacket, or how did you find your car, or whatever it is. And it's just everyday conversation, but it is information exchange. And if you were to put it a little more like in a networking context, and we saw each other the next week and we picked up where we left off, then we're doing it again and again. So it's not about being slick and smooth. All it is about the obtainment or the exchange of information. That's it.
Okay. So I mentioned a couple of times, I misspoke, and I said interviewing instead of networking. I think that's an important point that people don't realize. When they go into a networking meeting, it's not really an interview. It's fact-finding. It's an exchange of information. Please elaborate on that, Nathan.
That's right. So in an interview, that's someone that's asking you more questions, right? You're not interviewing someone else, and they want to know all about you. But when it comes to networking, what you're really doing is you've built a meeting and you're asking questions of them, but you're not interviewing them. You're actually just obtaining information. Now, in the way, so if you were to read this book, you understand that a meeting is actually structured out. There are 5 steps. Each one of those steps has a time limit. And when you get to the steps of asking the questions, you've actually created 3 specific questions for your contact. You're hoping to kind of gain the unique wisdom or knowledge. And then the 4th and 5th questions, the 4th question is asking for more names. The fifth question, and this is key and a really big deal in case we don't get around to it again, is asking how you can help in return. So one is about you, one is about the other. And all you're doing is trying to obtain information that's going to help you get to the next step that is going to get you closer and closer to the job or the career that you're really looking for.
Okay, so take us through the 5 steps. The broad strokes, we want people to buy the book, but really just the template. How does it work?
Okay, so step one, a great first impression of you. And before I even go on, I should say this is going to sound really familiar to everybody because we're doing these all the time, except that maybe not in this kind of process or without the practice. So a great first impression of you, a 30 to 60 second overview of your background. If you were networking for sales or business development purposes, perhaps that'd be a little bit about you and a little bit about your organization or your products. Then you get into the discussion step. Now that overview and that background is really important because what you're doing is creating context for step 3, which is the discussion. The discussion is comprised of 5 key questions. The first 3 I explained, specific to your contact. Question number 4 is asking for more names. The 5th, how you can help in return. And then when you get to step number 4, you are just wrapping up the meeting, just like you would wrap up a meeting. No long goodbyes, and then following up afterward. That's step number 5. There are 2 kinds of follow-up. There's immediate, right after your meeting, but then over the course of time in order to keep your network alive. Simple as that.
Okay, so let's say you structure it and you want to control the meeting in a nice way, and you've been allotted time, and you say it's 20 minutes. So somebody goes in there and it's flowing, and the person actually has a little more time for you. I assume you take advantage of that, but you want to know when. You have to read the room to realize, okay, when do I have to shut this down? Tell us a little bit about the subtleties there.
It's exactly it. You hit it right on the spot. If your contact is leading the discussion, and because say we're getting close to that 20-minute mark, and I say, hey Robert, I just want to make sure I want to be sensitive to your time. We're hitting about that 20 minutes. I promise 20 minutes. Are you good to keep talking? Then you put that person in the position, right, in the driver's seat, and they say, yeah, sure. Then you can keep going if you want to. What you don't want to do as the person who's leading the meeting is to go beyond what you've already promised. But you can check in. And by the way, even though this book is called a 20-minute networking meeting, it's not a hard and fast rule. It doesn't mean 20 minutes only. It can go longer, and it can also be shorter.
What if somebody invites you to say, hey, let's go to lunch, and you have either an established relationship with them or it's tangential because of somebody else. You go to the lunch. Do you need to use the same question, the same template, but just extend it over the course of the lunch?
Well, if you've already had a meeting or if someone's already familiar with you and your background, then that's already kind of established who you are, what your background is, and what the whole thing is. So you can actually just jump into it. And that's typically when meetings tend to be shorter. Yeah.
Okay. Now, COVID changed everything. People are working remote. People are meeting remote. Some people are comfortable with it. Personally, I find that chaos creates opportunities. I mean, I launched my YouTube channel during COVID exactly for that because I saw everything's going remote, and
right.
It is, and it's not going to go back the way it was. There'll be people going to offices, right. But a lot of senior executives I know, they're doing plug and play. They go into the office, there's no more offices. They go into a workstation, they plug in, they do their thing, they might meet with their colleagues in a conference room, whatever, and off they go. It's not the same as everybody has a different size office. I mean, in some industries, I'm sure there's more of that, but a lot of folks haven't gotten back to work yet. How do you manage networking in the time of COVID?
I'll be real honest with you. It's almost exactly the same. The only difference, it is a fairly big difference, but the only difference is that we can't be in person. However, we are still eye to eye, face to face. And I have to say that COVID has actually made networking a lot better. It's better than it ever has been, simply because of the fact that we've all had to gain familiarity with the technology, right? Beyond a year ago, there were some people that started to use, video for networking a little bit, but people still wanted to kind of do the phone calls. But then all of a sudden we're forced to use it for work, but not just for work, but for personal reasons as well. So now everybody has this familiarity with the tech. Also, there's pandemic boredom. We haven't been able to socialize in the same way we have in the past. So not at the workplace, not at the restaurants, and wherever we just sort of run into people. And with the combination of those two things, it makes it very convenient. No more commutes. Those have changed quite a bit. And now that everybody's used to it, it makes it very convenient to meet with people, even complete strangers. People are very open to it just to continue to be human and be social.
Hmm. Amazing. So the same, so the meetings are the same. So then the mistakes have to be somewhat similar also. And a lot of people have anxiety about networking because the same anxieties they have about interviewing. And again, as I said earlier, a lot of people are good at their jobs, but they're not very good at either looking for a job or interviewing. What are some of the mistakes that people make during networking, which is a very defined, specific skill? It's different than interviewing.
Right. I would say that there are kind of three things, mostly two. One of them is no agenda. When you go into any meeting, right, you need to have a planned discussion. You need to know what you're going to talk about. And when it's one thing if you're going to have a meeting in the workplace and kind of it's going to be a little bit off the cuff, but maybe because everyone is on the same page. But in a networking meeting, if you leave the impression that you're all over the map, that is not going to go well for you because it's just going to show kind of maybe how you organize or how you run such meetings. And if you're to be hired into that company, that's a real big risk. So people go into meetings without an agenda. The second thing is just taking too much time. You have to stick to the agreement. Hey, Robert, just needed 20 minutes of your time to ask you 3 questions. That's not too much to ask. If you go beyond that without your contact saying, yeah, let's go ahead and keep talking, no problem, I've got time, then that's going to be a real big mistake. And the third thing is, and this isn't a mistake so much as it is something that's forgotten, and that is asking how you can help in return. If you are asking, you're requesting someone's time and their expertise and their knowledge, and they give it to you, we can't very well just sit there and take. Those things aren't forgotten. It's not a big sin or anything like that, but it is the impression that you leave with someone that that's kind of how you run these sorts of meetings. So you also have to ask in return, how can I help you for the help that you've just given me? And this is, I still get emails from around the world on a basis, the power of this question and how it changes everything. So huge game changer, opens the door to more communication and other people that you would meet through that person.
Okay, my very special guest on Guys Radio, Nathan Perez, the 20-minute networking meeting. He's a co-author. He's a superstar in the area of interviewing and recruiting and in networking. And I'm so pleased you're here, Nathan. So thank you. How can I help you?
I appreciate it. Just being able to have this discussion and all those folks that are listening, this helps me a lot. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just joking around. Okay, in terms of laying out that template and then getting to that magic question at the end, I've said that a couple of times to people, and you mentioned it in the book. Some people get a little bit they're off kilter when you ask them that. They're not sure how to respond, and I didn't know. Did I make them feel uncomfortable? How should we, as a networker attending the meeting, deal with managing that question so we don't make the other person who's allowing us into their inner sanctum, if you will, feel uncomfortable?
Yes, it's a great question. And the answer is awareness, self-awareness. And what I mean by that is anybody listening right now who's thinking ahead of time to asking that question, you are already expecting that someone is not going to know how to answer it, or even expecting the question at all. Business tends to be transactional, right? You got something I want, I've got something you want, maybe there's some money and whatever, and then we kind of move on. But this is a whole different thing. So if you've done your research, because there's no reason that you would sit down with someone believing they could help you if you haven't done your research on that person and their organization, their background. Having done that research, you would know what their interests are, whether they have it on LinkedIn or whether you're able to kind of extrapolate that meaning from their LinkedIn profile. But if that person is taken off guard, and you can trust that most people are going to be surprised because no one asks this question, or not very frequently, you'll be prepared. So, gosh, Robert, I don't know how you could help me. It didn't even occur to me. Well, Nathan, I know that you have an entertainment background. You were in the business for 20 years. I know people who work at the ticket office that does this, that, or that. Or, I can find you some information about fishing or whatever. I saw that in your LinkedIn profile, but you're prepared. And what you're doing is, while that person may not necessarily give you the yes or no answer right there in that moment, it leaves the door open for them to reach back out to you or for you to reach back out to them. The point being awareness, self-awareness, and being prepared to be able to help them.
Mm-hmm. What's your personal take on LinkedIn? I mean, theoretically, it's really good, and everybody in business is on LinkedIn now. But it gets misused. A lot of people use it. They just start selling, or they connect with you and immediately want to sell you something, and it's really annoying. Or they haven't done their research and they connect with you, and you really have nothing in common, and there's no reason necessarily on surface to be connected. What is your take on LinkedIn, and how do people best manage it for networking?
Right. Well, we have to understand that it's a social networking platform, and it is not a sales platform. And I get lots of those things too. It just so happens that I was cited by the Huffington Post a few years back as one of the most linked accounts in the world. I have over 30,000 connections. But the thing is that I get a lot of those salesy things. It is just a platform to learn about people, learn about backgrounds. In the case of networking, you understand who it is you should be looking up, and being able to get in touch with them. You just keep that in mind. It's a very important platform because these days, it's changed the entire landscape of the hiring and recruitment industry. Once upon a time, it was all about phone calls, and now everybody's uploaded their own information onto the platform. So it's a great place to go. So you just got to look at this platform as a great place to be able to do your research, who you need to be able to contact. But you're not asking for jobs. You're not selling or pitching anything. It's just an opportunity for you to learn where you need to be, who you need to be talking to, and for some outreach.
Okay. How about if for some folks, either they're boomers and they've been downsized, or some folks they're changing careers, they want to change careers, they want to take some time doing that. Any advice as to deal with, instead of the folks who are just on a very straight vertical path, that people who are kind of gotten pushed off to the side, or they've gotten older and they're still vital and they want to stay in the business, or they want to switch businesses? Any thoughts, even from your recruiter background, about that? How to best manage that?
So first I'll say I actually lead a 6-week boot camp for a really large national online outplacement firm, and it's called What's Next. It's a career transition boot camp. The first and foremost thing that I would tell you, especially if you're a boomer or if you're in an older generation, listen to your gut. What is it you really actually want to do? If you want to stay in that lane, great, no problem, because you're going to have traction or whatever else. If it's something completely different, then the next thing you've got to do is understand your own priorities. Why do I really want to do this, and what are my next steps going to be? And of course, your next steps are always going to be about understanding what it's going to take, and that requires research. Once you start doing the research, believe it or not, it comes full circle to networking. Because you can read lots of books and lots of blogs and listen to podcasts, but you're basically piecemealing together what it is you need to do next, right? But people are the shortcut. When you can actually have discussions with people who are sitting in the current roles that you're looking at, or the industries that you're looking at, now you have just a direct opportunity to get specific information to specific answers or questions. That's it, questions. So you just kind of have to first listen to you and then talk to other people.
Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example. I have a long background, marketing and advertising, and I started doing my side hustle of podcasting and radio show host, and now YouTube, and it's grown, and it's growing and growing and growing. Now I want to reach out and do some networking in that area, yet I don't know too many people. Some people have discovered me, and I do have some decent contacts, but I want to expand that. I'm not looking to go back into work at an ad agency. I already was president of one. I've done that. I was EVP of a huge global conglomerate in advertising, and I don't want to do that, but I want to expand. I want to be the brand. Who should I look for when I'm looking at LinkedIn, and how do I approach them?
First question to ask yourself is, who else am I listening to that has done such a thing? Mm-hmm. You find and locate those kinds of people. And then also, other things kind of occur to us, like, gosh, what's production going to look like? Okay, there's the sound thing, and then there's the video thing, and then there's all this tech and whatever. And then whether it's that same person that's already doing it or other people who are responsible for those separate aspects, you'll want to talk to each one of those different people to find out what it's all about. So if someone's already a complete package, they've got all the production values down, you could just simply ask the questions. I noticed that you grew in this certain way over this course of time. I have this marketing background myself. Would you mind if I ask you a few questions about what that trajectory looked like? Simple as that. Or maybe it's just about sound. Maybe it's just about the video or whatever else. And someone who's been in the entertainment industry behind a camera or up in the booth, and you ask them very specific questions. But because they're very specific people who have these very specific experiences, you get these direct answers. And there's no gray area.
That's fantastic. And the reason I asked that, as an example, using myself as an example, because there's so many people in similar situations who are boomers and they're making some type of transition, and a lot of them may have something like a hobby that's turned into a side hustle that could turn into their next career. And I think it's really important that people don't get deterred and dejected about that, because you have to do your work, just like in your past career. For your next career, you have to do a lot of work also. And if you're not willing to do that, in my opinion, then you're not going to get the rewards. And step one sounds like networking is a great place for fact finding, making some new contacts, and just keeping the communication going back and forth.
You bet. You bet. It's kind of the end all be all. Networking, I mean, we've talked about it in sort of the ways that we have, but the truth is that it touches literally every aspect of business. Everything, whether it's going to be formal and we sit down and actually have a 20-minute meeting, or we're just exchanging information because we ran into each other in the grocery store. It's really critical. And I want to say too, for anybody who feels like, ageism is going to be an issue, you have to remember you are a walking data bank of information and experiences. And if you're the person who all the younger generations are trying to kind of catch up to, all the stuff that they are learning, you are deeply valuable. So not for one second should you think that you are being ruled out of anything. In fact, you're in the position to be able to give back in that way and be professionally helpful. So don't be discouraged by that.
Do you think, though, that the hiring companies think of it that way, or do they think old and expensive and I can't fire them? Or is it a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both, but the thing is you still have control over that. If someone asks you, why would you want to come back here? Why do you want to do this? Do you understand there's going to be a salary drop? Well, look, if you're in a position where you feel financially secure and their mission is really important to you, or you really like it, you can express as much. Because if they're already making judgments that you're going to be too expensive and they haven't had a conversation with you, well then, that's just presuming or just assuming what someone else is thinking. This is where you get back in the driver's seat and let people know. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much. Fantastic. Okay, last question. What else do people need to know? What are like the top 3 things people need to know to be a successful networker?
It's about relationship building. That's the big thing. Now, you don't go out there and you just try and build relationships. What it means is you try and relate. All right. You want to be able just to have discussions, and everything. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter professionally. We're all human beings. And everything that we do on a day-to-day basis around being a human being, what the commute looks like, it could be the weather, it could be just long work days, it could be the children, it could be the new shop that went up. We all have these things in common. So keep that in mind. I would also say just have discussions. Talk to anybody and everybody. Sometimes I get asked a lot, how do I prioritize who I'm going to talk to? You don't. What you do is you do something with the information that you're given. If there is such thing as being an older person and talking to someone who's much younger, but they know some things that you're not aware of yet. What do you know? Now you've learned something, and can be vice versa. And also, I would say that remember that everybody, by nature, most people want to help. People sort of avoid this networking thing because they think, people are going to expect this or expect that and whatever else. But the truth is that by nature, we want to help others. If you don't use the time wisely or efficiently, that's when things can get a little weird and people say no to requests. But humankind is good. And all we have to do in turn is help in return for anything that we get in return. And that's it. It opens the doors to all relationships. And you get to meet other people through those people because of that.
Fantastic. Nathan Perez, you crushed it. The 20-minute networking meeting, award-winning book. You're a superstar. Thanks for being on Guys Radio. You're a guy's guy.
Appreciate it, Robert. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on the show.